telling us about the Clarity Toolbox and One Resilient Earth. So thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks to all of you for coming today to discuss the tools and the approaches and the experience we've had in helping teachers and students move from climate anxiety to a state of inspiration that, if we put in different words, would be for us a state of, resilience, creativity, connection, and regeneration. So I'm Laureline Simon. I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization called One Resilient Earth. We are based in Berlin, in Germany, but we work internationally and we provide a lot of online learning to different target groups, essentially young adults who want to act as change makers in their communities, but also teachers and educators and sustainability professionals, including in the creative field. And the mission of our organization is to foster the resilience of communities and ecosystems to the impacts of climate change. And we do this through transformative learning. I have about 20 years of experience in the field of climate resilience. Before founding One Resilient Earth in 2020, I used to work with the French Development Agency and the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, where I supported international negotiations on adaptation to climate change and also loss and damage, and the Indigenous peoples and local communities platform, which was about a lot of my work was about knowledge exchange and stakeholder engagement. And when founding One Resilient Earth, I was really interested in thinking how we could learn about the climate crisis differently and how we could engage people in being more active, more courageous, more in the longer run, I would say, in taking action against climate change and in taking action that would also contribute to, regenerate communities and ecosystems, and that would contribute to the well-being of the people who are contributing to taking this action. And this is also the reason that led us to work on the Clarity project, which is the experience of climate anxiety as being very prevalent in the field. Like a lot of people who want to act to address the climate crisis either feel a lot of anxiety as the start, as what motivates them to take action, or the more they work on climate change and on addressing the crisis and its impacts, the more they feel anxious because they realize, like how big the crisis is, how dire it is, how little is happening. And so there was this underlying question of like, is it possible for us to work on addresses this pressing crisis, but to do it in a way that does not damage our emotional and mental well-being? Because I have been working in this field for a very long time. And I think for the first 10 years of my career, when I was in my 20s, I was definitely suffering myself from a lot of climate anxiety. So I was both taking action daily to address climate change and feeling a lot of climate anxiety in parallel or at the same time, which in a way shows that taking action may not be enough, to get rid of the anxiety. When we founded One Resilient Earth, one of the first initiatives that we developed was called the Climate Circles. So it was spaces for people who were working on climate change to come and talk about all the emotions that they feel about climate change. And we had a lot of young people join those climate circles and ask for having their own space that would be youth climate circles, where it was going to be youth-led and only for youth. And what was interesting to see is that a lot of those young people who were coming to the circles were also the ones who are usually studying sustainability or related fields. So again, it showed like the more aware you are about the crisis, the more you tend to suffer from climate anxiety. And then there was also some requests that I got from different organizations around Europe who wanted to develop projects at the European level to teach climate change to very young kids, including kids in preschool. And with all the work we're doing on emotional and mental well-being and climate anxiety, I was like, okay, it actually doesn't feel very responsible to just go there and teach all those facts to very young kids about climate change without taking into account the potential emotional and mental toll that it can take on them. And that seemed to be absolutely not a topic for climate change programs in school, even like 5 years ago. And then we had also seen as an organization when we're running online workshops for young people, the ones we designed as an organization, and where we always had a care team, meaning climate psychologists and mental health practitioners who were in charge of the emotional and mental well-being of the participants, that this care team had had a great effect on the learners, meaning it really helped the learners engage more with the content, especially the difficult parts of the content. And it gives them the ability to go further or to dive deeper into the work, meaning both in understanding the climate crisis and wanting to engage in more radical or more transformative action to address it. So that's the background against which the Clarity Project came into being. So the Clarity Project that I'm going to talk about and all the resources that we produce through the Clarity Project is a European project. It's co-led by 6 different organizations. One Resilient Earth is one of them, but we also work with Lund University in Sweden, Legacy 17, which is also based in Sweden, which is another nonprofit organization working on transformative learning. Climate Creativity in Norway that works with arts and storytelling and young people. We had a school who was part of the consortium, which is the Real School Budapest, which is a private school that works very much with like nature-based and methods and project-based learning. And the Vision Works, which is another organization based in Germany that focused more on helping us develop the platform infrastructure of the work. And so all those partners came together because we were in agreement that there was an issue with the way climate education was being done, especially targeting young people. This idea that children and youth are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, with their emotional and mental well-being on the line at a critical time in their development, and that we need to take their emotional and mental well-being into account. And with the conviction that we really need a deep shift in climate education to build the new competencies that students need for inner change and collective action towards climate resilience and regeneration. And that this shift starts with the teachers and other non-formal educators who are working with them. So our first assumption was that, okay, we need to better equip the kids, both the children and the young adults, because the projects targets young people from 6 to 26 years old. We're like, we really need to better equip the kids to deal with the emotional and mental well-being impact of the crisis. But the more we started working with teachers and educators towards this objective, the more we realized that a lot of the teachers and non-formal educators actually needed to have those tools for themselves first. So in order to support the kids, we really have to start by supporting the teachers first in developing those new competencies and those new skills so that they could better support the young people. And then the goal of the Clarity Project became to advance transformative climate resilience education so as to help educators and learners shift from a state of climate anxiety to resilience, creativity, connection, and regeneration. Because we also had a lot of feedback from the teachers we were working with that they were actually feeling a lot of climate anxiety themselves, and they were dreading having to talk to their students about climate change. And although they were focusing on solutions, they still felt a lot of either tension or stress or difficulties coming up with this topic in the classroom. So the first part of the project was really about co-designing the type of tools and learning resources that teachers and educators would need and would use, what would be most helpful to them in order to build those new competencies for themselves and for the children. for their learners. And so we started with some co-design within all the partners of the consortium, and also including consultation with teachers and non-formal educators. And that led us to co-design first like a competence framework. So you may not see it very, very clearly on the screen, but I'll have links to all the resources for Clarity so you can have a better view of the competence framework we designed, which was an extension or like a development based on the Green Comp. So the Green Competence Framework, that is a European framework for the green competencies that we should build in learners around Europe. And so we worked on the basis of the Green Comp, and we added a few more competencies and areas of action that we felt were very important to work specifically on climate resilience in a transformative way. And we also developed a policy brief because we understood that teachers do not teach in a vacuum, and the support that they get from the institutions in which they are teaching and at the policy level is going to very much determine how much freedom or margins of maneuver they have in the classroom in terms of what they teach, but also how they teach. And we had an in-person educators meeting in Berlin last June in order to refine the competence framework and the toolbox and the learning material that we had developed. And we also did like a pilot cohort-based training to improve the training material that we had, and worked with the teachers who had taken part in the online training to test the toolbox with their students. So we could test the whole toolbox that was developed with 1,000 young people in order to see if the tools that we had developed were relevant for both the teachers and the students. That's an image of the teachers meeting that we had in Berlin last year, where we worked on all of those different pedagogical material. And then we get to this point where we developed a number of resources. Sorry, I'm just... So the literature review, focusing on transformative approaches to climate education, the pedagogical toolbox with 21 tools and 56 activities for teachers and non-formal educators working with children and youth. We also have a teacher's guide, which is like a PDF document that accompanies the toolbox to help teachers and non-formal educators acquire the knowledge, the tools, and the skills they need to use the toolbox and foster climate resilience. Because depending on how you use a tool, you may or you may not achieve the objectives that you would like to achieve. We also have an online self-paced course for teachers and non-formal educators that is free, that's accessible to all, and has translated in 5 European languages in addition to English. And all of those resources can be accessed on the Clarity website. So you've got the hyperlink at the top of this page where you can scan the QR code. And so on this website, you can access the toolbox, the teacher's guide as like PDF documents, but also you can search the toolbox with like a search engine so that you can get the tools that you need exactly for the type of activity, for the type of competence you want to build for students that are of the age of the students you're teaching, depending on the length of the activity, or whether you want something that can be done easily, quickly, or that may require more efforts or more engagement. So I really invite you to have a look at the platform so that you can access the tools directly. And in addition to this website, which is where you've got all the learning resources, this is what the online platform where you have the online course looks like. And so once you get on the Clarity website, you can join the online course, and there it's a self-paced course. So you can just go through the different lessons, go through the whole course, or focus on different competencies, depending what you're looking for. And I want to give you also a quick overview of the toolbox so that you have an understanding of the tools that we have developed and the different competence area that we have covered through this Clarity project. So this is the first competence area, which is specifically on climate emotions and trauma. And so I will not go through like all the tools and all the activity, but we start by essentially fostering a trauma-informed learning environment, looking at the culture that's in the school or in the classroom or in the organization in which you're working, focusing on the importance of safety and care. We give teachers tools for self-regulating, especially in high-stress situations or when a student is experiencing acute dysregulation. We give some scripts to support learners. And then we also focus on ways to integrate checking on the students' climate emotions throughout the learning about climate change or the ecological crisis. First, by being able to name the emotions, then we have different ways to check on how your students are feeling and what kind of emotions are coming up for them. We also have a tool that is more about reducing climate anxiety through breathing, soothing body movements, contemplative practices. And the last tool, which is about acknowledging the climate emotions, is also about getting deeper into exploring climate emotions, which may be more relevant for like older students, or if there is more time to really do this deeper work, or in parallel to the other more regular work, which is about checking on climate emotions. The better understanding of what climate anxiety and climate emotions are is very transversal to the work that we do through Clarity. So it's important that we really encourage teachers and educators to first understand what climate anxiety is as a form of distress related to the climate crisis, understand all the emotions that are covered under what is sometimes called, climate anxiety or climate distress. See that it relates, to anger, sadness, fear, and also by sharing this climate emotions wheel, giving students more ability to communicate about what they're experiencing, and by this already getting more aware of what's happening in their own bodies. Then we really encourage teachers and educators to learn about not only climate emotions, but also climate trauma and trauma-informed practices. Um, Understand how climate emotions can manifest differently in different people, including because of neurodiversity, past trauma, what climate trauma is and how it can manifest in people and in groups, what to do and say when a student or a group of students are suffering from anxiety or trauma, when to look for additional support. And it's also important then for the teachers and educators to know, which support is available for the students and for themselves when they dive into providing more support in relation to climate emotions and climate trauma. We also highlight the importance for teachers to take care of themselves first. Whenever we engage with emotional work, which has a lot of benefits for the students and for them, for ourselves in the long run, we may first realize how we're not equipped in a way to make space for emotions. We're not used to it. And there are a number of care practices that can be integrated in our daily lives so that over time we become, better equipped, better able to deal with this emotional work. And it means, finding the right mix of practices that work for your own emotional regulation, expressing emotions creatively, grieving, also taking part in community support groups or community practices that can be around climate emotions, but can also go beyond. And we also see the care as nature care, meaning taking care of climate emotions is not independent or detached from taking actions, but also focusing on actions to address the climate crisis in meaningful ways. What we are trying to help teachers and also learners do is to understand, to get this awareness of how they're feeling in relation to climate change, in which emotional state they are, Meaning are they in a state where they feel too much, like they feel like they're overreactive, they have unclear thoughts, they're emotionally distressed because of what they're feeling in relation to climate change. That would be the state of hyperarousal, or whether they may feel, very numb or unmotivated, lethargic, or depressed, which can also be a sign that they're feeling too much, but their body is processing this information differently by making them feel very numb. When they're either in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, it's very difficult for them to engage with society, to take action, to take part in also finding solutions to addressing the crisis. It's totally okay and normal to be in those two states, but with the practices that we introduce through Clarity, we can help the learners go back in the green zone in the middle. That is the window of tolerance, so the state, the place in which you need to be to stay engaged with the world and with action. And so we use those activities to bring people back into that window of tolerance. And what also happens, or what we've also noticed, is that the more people work on emotions and feeling different emotions, the more their window of tolerance tends to grow and to widen. So that over time, there are less occasions or moments where you would go either in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, and then you would be also in a better position to support others. But that requires practice. We also acknowledge the importance of creating a culture of care and safety through everyday actions for the teachers and for the educators, which may feel very different from how they've been used to teaching so far or from the culture of the school and the institution. We highlight that it's really about presence, warmth, acknowledging the students every day. So you're not going to build, safety and care overnight. That's actually an intentional practice that's going to take commitment, intention, and regularity. We highlight the importance of naming and acknowledging climate emotions during class, because it allows people a space to not suppress what they're feeling and to feel in the moment instead of getting, the stress trapped within the system. So it's about acknowledging climate emotions through comments or by giving short breaks, giving students the tools to name the climate emotions, also keeping on normalizing the expression of emotions in class and giving students the possibility to self-regulate, including through movement. So it also means like normalizing crying or not judging a student for having to move around the class at a given moment if it helps them in processing the emotions they're feeling. And then we encourage teachers to integrate methods and exercises for emotional regulation, like breathing exercises, contemplative practices, including in nature, calming, soothing body movements, all of which are in the toolbox and in the activity cards so that you know exactly how to do it. And we also highlight the importance of taking neurodiversity into account. And that requires, again, a bit of work on the part of the teachers, but that is critical to really support the diversity of students that you have in the classroom. And then we encourage teachers to create spaces to express and explore climate emotions that can happen through climate circles, meaning spaces for open sharing and deep listening to climate emotions, working with climate symbols, climate embodiments, or grief practices. And again, we give very practical examples and recommendations on how to do this. That was all about the first competence area, which is like very foundational to the Clarity toolbox. And I'm not going to go into as much details for the other competence areas, but you're more than welcome to check them. And so the second one is about nurturing connection to oneself, others, and nature. And that includes a number of creative activities like climate journaling, sharing connection stories, that center storytelling, also connecting with the animal, giving nature time. So all of the activities can be looked at online. The third competence area is about embracing values that sustain the lives of all living beings. And that includes activities to experience belonging to nature, also learning from Indigenous peoples. And there you have quite a lot of information about how to do it in ethical, respectful, non-appropriative ways. We also have a lot of activities focusing on listening, including active listening, deep listening, exploring the iceberg, and finding what sustains your life. So that's an example of young people practicing deep listening. The fourth competence area is about opening up to diverse, climate resilient and regenerative futures, including by exploring futures through art, growing futures literacy, experiencing emergence through different games like future games, improvisation, and also looking at how we can design for resilience and regeneration. And so that's an example of like solar punk arts that can be introduced or integrated into the work. And then the last competence area is about taking action towards climate resilience, ecosystem regeneration, and societal transformation. And those are like very practical hands-on activities in the school or with the community about, regenerating soils, taking local action for climate resilience by supporting local ecosystems, supporting local climate resilience actions, including the one carried out by the municipalities, fostering solidarity and repair, and also mobilizing the community through art and dialogue. So that's an example of a community which is about, making art with trash in order to create an exhibition and open dialogues with the community. And that took place in Norway with our partner Climate Creativity. And there are lots of opportunities for engagement if you want to dive deeper into the work that we've started through the Clarity Project. So you can join our Transforming Climate Education community that's online on the We Are One Region Earth community platform. And we also have monthly online meetings for teachers and educators to get together and that address different topics. The next one is about teaching during extreme events, and it's happening at the end of June. I can share the dates in the chat afterwards. We also have future programs that are going to be run, including cohort-based teacher training. One is scheduled in the fall, and so you can express interest to join here. And you're always welcome to join the self-paced course and look at the self-paced learning material online. We have a policy brief that you can help us disseminate, and that could help, get support maybe from the hierarchy in the school or from the community, depending on where you're working with whom. It's available in multiple European languages, and all dissemination is welcome. And then I'm sharing again like the QR code and the link to the website where you can find more resources from the Clarity Project. And I'm going to stop there for questions. Just want to share the email in case you want to reach out to us afterwards.